On behalf of ICCA, I would like to welcome you to the first Africa ICCA Conversations. Our topic today is Africa's business events recovery and what are we going to do going forward and what impact did COVID-19 have on the meetings industry on the continent. My name is Esmerie Steinhoffel. I'm the Regional Director Africa for ICCA, and I would like to welcome our just over 100 members who registered for today's webinar from Africa and around the globe. Before we start, I just want to point out a few housekeeping notes. Our webinar today will be 90 minutes. We really want to encourage our members to use the chat, and I've already seen a few messages coming through, and then later also the Q&A. So we will be answering questions from members after the panel discussion. And also remember to upvote questions in the Q&A, which you think is more relevant. So those questions will be answered first. Then we will also be doing a poll at the end to get feedback from members and also suggestions for future webinars. I now would like to introduce our moderator for today, Nina Frazen-Pretorius, who I think is very known to all of us. Hello, Nina. Nina is the CEO of the Conference Company, a professional conference organizer focusing on association conferences with offices in South Africa that are in Durban, Johannesburg, and Cape Town. So Nina will be moderating the session today. Then we have our three panelists, Lindiwe Rakarebe. Lindiwe is the CEO of the Durban International Convention Center and also an ICCA board member. Then we have Amanda Kotchen-Schlapo. Amanda is the Chief Convention Bureau Officer from the South African National Convention Bureau. And then Doris from SRC Agency, she's the Managing Partner. Also a professional conference organizer, and they have offices in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, as well as Kigali in Rwanda. Thank you to the panelists and to the moderator. Nina, I'm handing over to you now.
Thank you, Esmerie. Really great to be with everybody today and to see all the chats. Thank you for that lovely introduction. And also thanks to our panelists for agreeing to be part of this webinar today and our discussion regarding the recovery plan on the African continent. I think many of you have been attending a number of webinars and meetings that ICCA has hosted really successfully, addressing a number of topics. But today, we really want to look at what happens when COVID-19 is past. The lockdowns have been lifted on the continent. Things are perhaps looking a bit more perspective. What are we going to be doing to prepare to return back to business? And what does that mean in the meeting sector? What is Africa going to look like when in the meeting scenario post-COVID-19? So really a bit of we pose this question to our panelists, a little bit of a strategic approach, looking into your own personal glass ball and telling us what is it that you think. As Esmerie has introduced our panelists, each of them come from a really different angle within our sector, which we think is great. So Amanda representing really a destination marketing, Lindiwe with her experience in the convention center sector, and then Doris as an organizer, PCO, working directly with the clients as well. So I'd like to ask, what is Africa doing in preparation of returning back to business after COVID-19? I pose that first to you, Amanda, from a destination perspective.
Thank you so much, Nina, and thank you so much for the opportunity and to be here. Quite trying times, I think, for all of us, as we know, but very happy to be with, with all our friends from around the globe and Africa. And I think if we ask specifically, from a destination perspective, what Africa needs to do, one of the most important things for me is that this is the time, we always talk about Africa being together. We are co-opetition. What is brand Africa? And I think in this instance, brand Africa will be even becoming more important for us and to work together. So for me, there are short-term that I believe that we need to do, activities that can be actioned by destinations to firstly protect the industry. I think, as destinations, as convention bureaus specifically, I think it's very important that we protect our industry until we return to a new normal. So working together and see what that is that we need to do. And then long term, I think it is destinations that start preparing themselves to go back to business under the new ways of working. And with that, I mean, I do believe that we will have a new way of bidding. There will be different requirements for bids. And I think to develop that is extremely important. So from my perspective, I think for destinations, they really need, we really need to, in this time, look at how can we position ourselves better. How can we make sure that there is still an industry, because we can attract whatever bids we want, but the rest of the industry need to be there. Our venues need to be still, intact. Yes, with new rules and regulations, our service providers, like Doris is here, need to be there. Our hotel industry need to be there. So I think that is, it's very important, because the one thing that COVID-19 brought is that the playing field is leveled. I think we all are on the same, it's kind of like we start from scratch. And so it's important that we will be able to differentiate ourselves from competing destinations if we can adapt the new ways of working. And the new ways of working for me, as I said, look at what will give that trust to our clients, that they will come back to the destination. And then the last thing I think that really is important for us is that we will look at how can we help the clients to deliver successful events, because I think associations specifically also have a lot of challenges with this new ways of working. We always talked about the digital world and the digital area, but it was always just the afterthought. And I think it comes very clear now that it is the thing that needs to be in front.
Amanda, thank you for that. I think the one word that really jumped out at me that you were mentioning with the different areas, looking at the way forward for business and working together as a continent, is we need to protect our sector. I really like that word. I know you really have a little bit of a government hat on. I know you're a passionate meat industry person and have been really a lobbyist and a champion for the continent and for South Africa as well. But are there certain things that we can do to protect? Is there anything that you've come across with all the millions of webinars and discussions and meetings that have been held about that? What protective measures? Because I'm sure that in Europe or in Asia or Latin America, I think those colleagues and friends, ICCA friends, are having similar challenges. When you say protect, is there something particular that just jumps out at you?
I think at this stage, of course, I think as you say, Nina, there's many the destinations, coming up with financial support, and I think it is extremely important. In South Africa, we also have a tourism relief fund, but we also have business support, for bigger businesses. The government really put behind the economy quite a substantial amount of money. But I think the most important thing to protect is that we need to work together, so that when we are ready, that we are ready also financially, So for me, it is really not to have a price war. I think it's a time where we need to work all together. As I said, it's when we do the bid and all the parties of a bid, I think it's very important that all those bid parties, if I can call them that, that we come together and present our destination in a cost-effective way, but still be able to preserve our businesses.
Okay, so basically you're saying we need to look after those different streams that actually form the meeting sector to collaborate. I like that, Amanda. That sounds very sensible. Well, thank you for that. Lindiwe, we can go over to you, looking into your crystal ball there, going back to business after COVID-19, a venue perspective. What do you see in that crystal ball?
Okay. Thank you for that question, and greetings to everybody. I think as Africa, we are humbled and also honored that our South African president, Cyril Ramaphosa, who also is the chairman of the AU has been invited by the WHO for the global presidential meeting, as he has been cited by the World Health Organization as having an exemplary response to the COVID-19. With that as a backdrop of the African continent, I'd like to place in context how I'm thinking or my insights to the, as we know that the future demands in our industry will be continually impacted by the status of the tourism around the world. And each region is really important, how each region responds to this virus. And I really think that there are various ways we need to look at as we prepare to get back into business. Firstly is our business models, introducing new ways of doing things, adapting to the new normal after the post-COVID-19. We need to look at the impact that this is going to have socially, economically, as well as politically. We need to question ourselves whether our businesses are going to be able to function in the way that they have in the past, or whether some changes needs to be done here. Do we need to embrace the technology if social norms are really going to change? Do we have to look at the new sources of our markets? If the international restrictions are going to be there, people are not going to be traveling, come to our spaces. So I think it's important that I need to touch on what Amanda said. Our marketing of our region or of our region. So we've got to really put an effort into how we market our local and regional markets, because we know that people are not going to be traveling and coming through here. But in the meantime, we need to then stimulate the desire for those people who haven't come through here to travel, because we know that later it's going to be open. But collaboration is important. As Amanda was saying, we need to work together and come in together. So as Africa, we need to have a collaboration, package our products. So the important thing that we need to take out from what I'm saying is that we need to define our offerings. Our facility offerings needs to be purely defined. Our region needs to be defined as we look and visit each other, but as we promote our regional destination or our venues, it's important that we define because we're gonna work differently. We're gonna have social distancing that we're gonna look at now, our heightened hygiene, number of people that are gonna be allowed in our events. So we're gonna work differently, but it's important that we market our regions in a very different way.
So Lindiwe, thanks for that. I'm hearing that you're saying you realize it's not the same old back to business. It's definitely throw out what we knew and reinvent ourselves. But you can't do that independently as a venue. You're going to need to lean on your destination, your African colleagues and the rest of the continent, and then also respond to what the other markets dictate and expect with our European, Latin American, Asian visitors coming back. So really reading the markets and being able to do that 360 turnaround and offer what the customer expects differently and respond quite quickly and aggressively. I think that's what I'm hearing that you're saying to get us back to business. And I think you're quite right. I don't think you can't do that as the CEO and your team as the convention center. Amanda can't do it. A lot of collaboration. I think just mindful of time, but I think, it does open up a whole other train of thought when you're saying we need to be prepared. We need to be prepared for visas. We need to be prepared for how Home Affairs would work, would process, how people would then feel safe when they are being processed, when they are arriving. So that could actually be a whole webinar on its own for us to unpack how the new normal is going to be looking in the future. And I'm sure that with ICCA, there will be lots of other opportunities for webinars to look at that and to collaborate as well. And maybe within the continent to make sure that what we're doing, Rwanda's doing, Kenya's doing, Tanzania's doing, so that there's maybe an understanding for the international visitor. This is how it works, and I will be safe, and to rebuild the trust after COVID-19. So collaborations coming through really strongly there. Absolutely. Doris, what are your thoughts there as the PCO? Because it's your destination, the government, the marketing tools that Lindiwe touched on, the collaboration, making sure that all those things. But at the end of that, the PCO has to then pull it all together. How do you see the new normal going forward?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on this panel today. Thank you to all the ICCA members who have joined. I see a lot of people have joined in, and we look forward to your comments, and so we can make this a really interactive session. So, yeah, Nina, I've been listening attentively, to Amanda and to Lindiwe, both of whom are representing institutions, Amanda from a government perspective, and Lindiwe in a way, being ahead of a venue. These are things that they know that they're already in place. When you're talking about recovery, we're talking about, from a PCO perspective, we are smaller. We are more private in nature. We're private entities owned by individuals, run by individuals, and yes, they get to grow. So, in as much as Africa has taken a while to get to terms with the COVID-19 blow, it's going to take even longer for PCOs to really bounce back post-COVID-19. Because at the snap of a finger, all business that we expected, I know that is the case for everyone else, but all the business that we expected has gone right out of the window. It has vanished right before our very eyes. A lot has happening and is still happening that is out of a PCO's control. But the one thing that we can control is our reaction to the situation. Yes, everything seems to be uncertain, but the one thing we can control is our reaction to the situation that stands before us. Now, the good news with all of this is that business is going to bounce back. This is evident when we look at the calendars for 2021, and in terms of Rwanda, even for Q4, business is still booked, which means the clients are still interested in bouncing back to business, which means we as PCOs must be ready for that. So as a PCO, I would say what we're doing, I'll speak about what we're doing as SRC. We have looked at this way. We've gotten over the shock. We've gotten over the fact that there's no business for this year, pretty much. And now we think, you know what, just put our socks on and just deal with the situation that is facing us. And the question is, how will we make sure that we are ready for business when the world comes back to normal? Well, when I say normal, I mean when we're coming back to business. How are we still going to be even in business? Because what we decide to do now will determine whether we're going to pick up and continue being in business. So we are using this time to really to lay out our organization's foundation so that we can come back stronger. We've been given lemons, so now what do? We're going to make lemonade out of it. We have decided that we're just going to sharpen our skill swords. We are going to train our teams. On COVID-19, for instance, they need to understand exactly why are we in the situation that we're in right now, and what can we do to make it work for us to come back stronger. So we are sharpening our skill swords. Our teams are going on training. Thank goodness I'm a trainer myself, so we train them on health and safety. We train them on things that we didn't have time to train them on. The whole spectrum of the MICE industry, we're training and getting our teams stronger. We're also working on our brands. We're updating our websites. We're updating our LinkedIn profiles, which were pretty much not dated for a while. We're working on our social media pages, and we're working on the strategies that we need to employ once we're back to business again. We're also, SRC is also a communications agency, as well as a PCO. So we're offering our services on a pro bono basis to organizations that need to put some communication strategies in place. Because you know what, when we talk about preparing for returning back to business, we also need to communicate about ourselves and what we do and how we can help those partners who are around us, because they're also going through difficulties just as much as we are. Now is not the time to offer services and maybe charge for them. So we're reaching out to organizations that we work with in that space and asking if there's anything that we can do to help, because they're also in this fix. And industry specific, we're also preparing for the new normal. There will be a new normal. What is that going to look like? Yeah, how do we get ourselves ready for that? It's going to be business unusual. We cannot come back and do what we used to do before and expect that it's going to work going forward. No, it's not, which means we have to prepare our teams accordingly. We have to be proactive to anticipate how will we need to be working, how will we need to be making sure that our clients understand that we understand what they need and then provide that for them. And
Doris, I'm going to stop you there because
yeah.
I think you make a very good point. Thank you for giving us your vision of looking at how we have to respond. I think there's very much a thread, although you ladies each speak from, or panelists speak from a different angle. But I think Amanda starting with saying that we need to look after each of the sectors to make sure that we do have when we are bidding, we have got those resources, services, be it technical, be it PCO, be it venue, be it transport, whatever those facilities are, that they are in place, and that we are prepared and ready for a different approach. Some of the quotes and questions or chats that I'm seeing is, I think, Rosemary, you made a really lovely comment here on the side saying there should be global testing. And I think that would speak to Lindiwe, your being prepared, is if everybody has got a global testing card, like I know very often in parts of Africa or Asia, if you traveled, you needed to have a yellow jaundice certificate. And if you have that in place and you give that out, that might be something really, really practical to make people feel safe. And I think those are the things that will work, or potentially what we'll see coming into play as our business changes and develops and retrospects itself for where we are going. The next question that we would like to pose to our panelists, but thank you to all our participants and viewers today. We really would like to also ask you to perhaps, excuse me, answer on the chat, is we wanted to say, we're hearing about all these problems and the challenges. I loved your comment, Doris. How we respond is up to us. And I think that positivity is so lovely and so heartwarming. So thank you for sharing that with us today. But our question is, what are 3 practical things that we can do to get ready? I know Doris has already mentioned some of her staffing and training and gearing up, and this is the right time because we have got time on our hands during the lockdown and the shutdown. But what are 3 practical approaches that people go away today and say, geez, I have to attend these ICCA webinars because I learned one great thing. 3 initiatives, approaches, what you can do that will actually garner trust and rebuild our sector, both for the client, maybe for your staff, maybe for our sector. If we can ask anybody within the audience, if you would like to comment, we would like to bring those once the panelists have had an opportunity to give their thoughts and share their thoughts with us. If we'd like to bring that up. So please share yours. Doris, what are the 3 practical approaches and initiatives? Boom, boom, boom. What are they? What are you going to do? What can you share today?
Well, number 1, we need to shift focus from our business, from ourselves to the client. This is not the time to go gung-ho, sell, but more approach the client and say, we're your partner, we're your partner, we're your partner. So we're shifting focus from our business to the clients, because clients are hurting too, and we need to understand their world, we need to understand their fears, and we need to position ourselves as their partner and not just a supplier of the service. Okay. Number 2, something I picked up from another webinar, but I think it's going to be very relevant here. There's going to be COVID phobia. Way past COVID-19, people are still going to be worried and fearful about getting together in groups again. So how are we going to handle this? We need to invest in post-COVID-19 communications. Communicate, and communicate what precautions are being taken to control the spread of germs and disease in future. We need to communicate that. And what's really, not worrying, but most organizations tend to not communicate. But you know what? The absence of communication is also communications. You're not saying anything, which means the industry or the clients are free to make something about you. And number 3, health and safety is going to be paramount for our teams, especially for our teams. It's fine, the venues might be compliant, the destination might be compliant, but we as the service providers must also be compliant. So if there are going to be hygiene standard certifications that we need to take, we're going to take them, just to make sure that we it is a practical thing that we can start putting in place right now, so we're compliant with the industry going forward.
I like those, Doris. Thanks. Those are really great. I think that health and safety, I think you've just nailed it on the head there. Amanda, what are your 3 practical approaches, just carrying on from Doris's thoughts there?
Mute me. Thank you so much. Thank you. I think what very much what Doris said, the first one for us is focus on housekeeping. And, you know, every sector and every business, I suppose, have different housekeeping issues and matters that they need to look after. You know, for us, it is housekeeping in, like I said, you know, how do we come back to BIT? How do we look different in this ways of working? How do we work with our client, you know? So for me, understanding our clients are even more important now as what it was ever before. And for us in housekeeping, it is really looking at our bidding offering, as well as, you know, our bid framework that we have. And I think as Africa, you know, I think you said earlier, Nina, that, you know, that working together and how will we do it together? So for me, you know, that we can have a standard, you know, when it's coming to presenting our destinations, the co-opetition, very important. Then the second thing that I think that is really important is that we need to focus on, and for us, that's what we are doing. We are focused on national association development, you know, so that when we are again open our borders, that we are ready with our associations to put up their hands and help us to attract the meetings. Because I think the important thing for us is that meetings will still happen. You know, as people say, some people are doomsayers and say, you know, we will not come together. I know definitely Lindiwe will die because she needs some hugs, you know. We need to be together, but I think it will look different. But we will definitely still meet, because meetings and conventions are still economic development driver. You know, as we always say, we are not travel agents, we are change agents. And I think, you know, for us to cement that is extremely important in this time. And it is how we pitch up that is so important. And then I think the last thing that I will say is that don't plan too far ahead. You know, I think short-term planning is what we need to do now. In this time, you know, I was reading an article about overcrowding and over-tourism. You know, this is in a time like this, and also the whole thing around greening, you know, and sustainability and, you know, pollution and all those things. What are those things that we will, you know, that this time will help us in developing the new ways of working?
I like that, Amanda. I think the environment is just so important, and I think we all have children and families and the growing population, and now seeing how climate change is actually, the pollution levels have dropped. How can we ensure we've got meetings? We all need that revenue. We all need to pay school fees and pay groceries and buy groceries at the end of the day. Ensure people are able to meet and share, but in a really, really good economic and environmentally friendly way. Lindiwe, what are your thoughts on this? What are the take-homes? What are 3 practical? I really love, Doris, your communication strategy. Amanda, thinking about the environment, and potentially I see some of the comments coming through, you know, is there an African approach? I really like that. Is there a strong African message? That's something that we definitely should consider or take offline and discuss more. But Lindiwe, what are your thoughts there? What are other practical approaches that we need to implement going forward?
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to say that we may need to get used to the new normal after this crisis. And just like how we got used or we really accepted the new levels of security screening when we got to the airports after the 9/11, I think our venues, like any convention center and the arenas, will also adapt to the new or better heightened hygiene as a standard, as a norm, as a way of making sure that our areas and our venues are safe and they're healthy for all our delegates. So I think the delegates will then start seeing the automated hand sanitizers. People will see it as a norm that we check their temperatures as they come into the center. People will see it as a norm that we have all these equipments in our centers just to make sure in our entrances in an effort to build that visitor trust within our sector. That's my first one, the heightened hygiene. We'll get used to it, like how we get used to the airport, we get screened. The second one, we may need to see how we configure our events as the venues. So the social distancing is gonna still remain with us. So the way we, as a venue perspective, how we configure the different events is gonna be very important that we discuss with the clients. So the transparency and the flexibility that we need to engage the clients as we prepare for each event is gonna be very important. How flexible are we to accommodate that distancing within and configure the different way the events will sit is very important to us. We're going to be able to do this, and we have to do it if we really want to meet those social safety requirements and find ourselves compliant. So that's the compliant element, and also being able to making sure that we're keeping people safe within the social distancing. Thirdly, we need to make sure that we have our plans in place, our disaster management plans, very important. And I think we have benefited, or we're going to continue to benefit from the organizations like ICCA, AIPC, as well as UFI, because we've seen that during the crisis and coming together, people have been sharing knowledge on how to have these disaster management plans or your business continuity plan. So develop those plans and make sure that this excellent sharing of the knowledge is really coming alive with all the different centers. Appropriating this information into your own perspective business, wherever you are, because we all have business plans, and make sure that those plans are developed and are rolled out within the teams and they become effective. Make sure you have the telephone numbers of all those people that needs to respond during the emergency contact, you know, the work number and so on. These are the really important things that will instill confidence within your clients as we gain a trust to make sure that the sector becomes alive again. But let's just remain prepared and share our best practices and share the information as much as we can. And I think we will win.
Thank you, Lindiwe. Esme, I think you chose the right panelist for today's discussion, because just in summary, those three practical things, I hear the communication, I hear Amanda and Lindiwe saying that you actually need to plan, do the housekeeping. Amanda, that housekeeping word, can we change it? Because I'm tired of the housekeeping after 30 days of lockdown, but I know what you mean. But, you know, preparing ourselves, getting ready for what is the client's expectation. And then Doris, you so lovely, you really articulated that very well, saying we need to communicate that, and maybe it is as a region, as a country, and then as a continent, what are we putting in place? I love the environmental side. Maybe that also needs to come into the planning, because we're going to be doing good and the distancing is going to be working. And then health and safety, I think you've all touched on that, is going to just become the new normal and paramount. Esme, I saw that listening to our panelists, sorry, I was so busy listening, I haven't been watching all the chats. Are there any pertinent questions or some feedback from our audience today that has come out that you'd like to raise or share with us?
Nina, I'll just briefly go through some of the suggestions in the chat. The one our panelists also touched on, which is, can we as Africa set our own common standards and rally around them so we can embark on a positive PR campaign to show why meetings should choose Africa as a continent? And
that's lovely. And I think Lindiwe touched on that, to say like getting those norms and standards from an ICCA or a UFI perspective into place, and then members can use them and apply them. I think we need to take that home, Esme, to ICCA HQ there. We'll probably get into trouble later, but I think it's a really, really good suggestion.
Then another one is that, again, being touched on, communication will be key, but also transparency, which I think is very important. And also at the moment, a lot of our members are actually spending time touching base, communicating with their clients, because it's not like, although we're all working from home, it's like a home holiday. We can still communicate with clients from the member side and create even stronger bonds with the clients after COVID-19. And then
I think that was Doris's question, and I just see here is, sorry to interrupt you, I also see here, I think Meryl Fairfoot made a nice comment, and I think that touched also on what everybody else was saying about the COVID phobia and traveling. And I think we all feel a little bit nervous even to go to the supermarket today as our main outing for the week. But, you know, are we going to need to look at those regional meetings instead of the long haul meetings? I think that opens up a whole other discussion as well.
These were the main ones that came up, Nina.
Okay, no, that's lovely. Thank you very much to everybody who contributed there. Then, you know, Lindiwe was talking about when you go to her venue or any other venue around the world, or when you go to the airport, there are certain expectations. You would expect that someone's going to take your temperature or see your COVID-19 card when you register with the PCO at the registration desk, or you're going to have a lot of space in between so that you are protected if somebody perhaps sneezes, or there's no you know, engagement with the person too close, so that you could perhaps catch other germs. Who knows what they might be. But then that poses another question to us. What are the cost implications? Because, you know, all of a sudden at the airport, if you think about it, they've got these big security screening, they've got staff, they've got people. That comes at a cost. What are these new normals and our client's expectation, to Doris's earlier point, saying building, what is it the client expects? I'm sure they are going to expect those things, Lindy, we already highlighted for us as the new normal. What are the costs implications going to be from a venue perspective that you are sort of eyeing out and preparing for, Lindy, in your perspective?
Thank you, Nina. So I think this situation really does have the makings of a perfect storm for our industry, if I may say that. This is really the makings of a perfect storm. Currently, like most players in this industry, we are facing a total loss of income. You know, whilst we're still carrying some significant costs, the overheads of the lockdown, we still have to pay for our security, we still have to pay for our staff. So there's no income, there's no revenue, but we've got those you know, overheads that you still need to pay for. So these are the costs that we need to deal with. As at the time, and the industry, we need to be increasing our marketing efforts, so we cannot sit and not do anything. So we need to stimulate the demand for our services and invest in our new ways of doing business, as discussed earlier. So we've got to make sure that our digital space is up, because we're going to be forced, whether we like it or not. We're going to find ourselves having those hybrid events. Some of the people will come to the venue, some of the people will have to Zoom in or listen digitally. So we need to find ourselves, you know, those are the costs we need to deal with. So, but we are hopeful that once the solution of this pandemic is found and events resume, we know that the events will need some encouragement to run up again, so that everybody is aware. So we can't stop the marketing, because we've got to make sure that everybody knows where Durban is. Everybody knows where the different regions are. So that's why I'm saying we cannot stop the marketing of what's going to come after the COVID-19. But we know that this industry has been really been hit hard financially through this COVID-19. As a result, clients are then going to be so price sensitive. So as a venue, we've got to be mindful of that. So as we market our venue, we've got to be very sensitive of the pricing, because people are coming out of an area where they've got no money. So the question is, how do you balance the rising cost of making sure that people are safe? We have sanitizers, we've got temperature testers, we're keeping the distance, we're keeping the place sanitized, but at the same time, we want to make sure that people still come and we keep our prices down. So it's that balancing act that we find ourselves having to do. But the costs are there. We've got to still pay our people that are coming through. We've still got to pay our security. We're still going to make sure that the venue is maintained in a very nice way. So people are eager to come and be at this venue. So it's the balancing act that we need to have, Nina.
I think that to me, this is another webinar, is like, you know, are there costing models to put in place the new normal, i.e. temperature testing, having facilities that can be quarantined for temporary if someone is ill, all those measures and the whole value chain. How does one price that? I don't know that. And I think that like opens up a whole other can of worms, but that is an expectation. You've got the overheads. How do we deal with it? I really think, Esme, that's something that potentially in the very near future, Amanda said don't plan too far ahead, but I think breaking down our problems and starting to work on them, I think this is really an area that is going to be challenging. Doris, do you have some war stories or some interesting facts to share with us with cost implications from a PCO perspective that you've experienced recently and looking into the future as well?
Yeah, well, I would say we're actually facing one right now. I wouldn't call it a war. It's more, it's probably one of the many battles that we're going to have to overcome until we get to the end of it. But from our perspective, I mean, we're grateful that the events and conferences that we were working on were not canceled. So they were postponed. So essentially, that means we, in as much as some of the events that we were doing have been, we can't get to do anymore that we're expecting to do, but the major ones have been postponed. So that means that we have a longer time to work on them. The issue is here now, we're dealing with clients who don't necessarily, because of whatever they're going through themselves, because everyone's going through something, clients may not necessarily have the budget to keep on paying you longer so you can facilitate what they need to be done at a later date. So we're the real cost implication now, the war that we're facing right now, is how do we strike a balance, as Lindiwe said. Like, you know, we understand that you need to get this conference done whenever you need to get it done, but we still need to keep working on it to make it bigger, if not better, considering the other constraints that are going to come on board. So I find that we as PCOs, and probably everyone else in the industry, we need to be mindful. We need to be a little bit more empathetic of each other's, you know, of each other's situations. We're all going through this together. So in as much as there are going to be costs that have to be made, we have, again, I'm very big on communication, as you'll probably find out. We have to communicate with our clients and understand from them what is important to them, and communicate to them what is important to us and how we can bridge that together, so that you do what needs doing that is important, and do away with doing things that are not as important, so you can get a better result whilst keeping all costs in check. It's going to be very tough, but we're just going to have to do it, because at the end of the day, as Lindiwe said, there's going to be a lot of cost implications. All these new measures that we have to implement, they're not going to be free, unless someone is going to come and give us a lovely little grant. Well, that would be wonderful, but unless otherwise, we have to figure out how we are going to finance all these new measures that have to be put in place. And again, it really, really is a case of mind over matter. If you decide and if you've made up your mind that you have to stay in this business, you have to find a way of making it work. Hopefully, other PCOs, I mean, I'm talking from a PCO perspective, if you have other streams of income, then you need to reinvest them back into this business to make sure that you remain afloat. Saying that you can't afford it, therefore you're not going to do it, is not going to cut it. If the industry is going to require that we are compliant from a health and safety perspective, that we get accredited for either hygiene standards, or all of our teams go through a particular hygiene qualification, we're going to have to do it if we have to stay afloat. Saying that, sorry, we don't have the money because of COVID-19, that won't cut it. So we just have to find ways of reinvesting whatever income that we had elsewhere, putting it back on this side of the business so that we can stay afloat. And again,
so what I'm hearing, Doris, is I think you're saying, you know, you're working for longer, but potentially less money. So there's definitely a negotiation either with a client for cost implications, because they have to pay for a longer period there. And potentially there's also loss of revenue, because if you're going to a hybrid meeting or a virtual meeting or entirely a virtual meeting, the loss of the venue rental cost won't be there, the catering costs aren't going to be there, the accommodation or housing establishments are losing their revenue. So whilst we're talking about cost implication, we're also speaking about revenue loss due to not hosting meetings. So I'm hearing that you're saying it's quite a complex measure there.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you, Doris. Thanks for sharing. We feel your pain. I'm also a PCO. I hear you. I hear you. It is very, very challenging environment we all find ourselves in. Amanda, with your government national CVB hat on for South African tourism, what is it that you see? What are the cost implications? I know already you've already alluded to the fact that government has had to look into its coffers and helping small businesses, helping employers and employees. So a tremendous amount of financial revenue that maybe our economy really couldn't afford it, ill afford at this point in time. But what do you see? What are the costs? What does the future hold with meetings? And maybe, I know there was a question earlier on, someone had a question saying, how will meetings that are potentially being postponed or going to be hosted in the future, and the bid finance or the bid support that was given, how will that impact? So perhaps if you can deal with those, that slightly, with that matter as well, in response to the cost implications. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nina. I really feel, because I know that, there is a cost to everything, there is not, but I think, as I said in the beginning, it's not the time that we must have price wars. And if I say price wars, I even mean, when we are on competition or co-opetition, as I like to say, between destinations, whether it is regional or whether it is international, I think it's a time where we need to set when our meetings come back, we need to have a set of our own rules and standards, because if we are not doing, and Hendrik asked, what will we working on together? We need to work on that set of rules and standards for our meetings industry, because we need to determine our own destiny. If we are not doing it, someone else is going to do it for us. And something that come to mind with me, is that when we started to talk about greening events and, sustainability, and I remember there was a cost to that. And some people simply would say, no, but we don't need that. I think we now understand this is not going to go away. We are going to need to have some set of rules and regulations, new ways of bidding, new requirements, that destinations and events will have to, have to adhere to. But I think the thing that I want to say, what can we work together on? We can work together on those things as destinations to come up, with a support package that contribute to the full value chain. You ask about, where will that, when it's coming to a bidding, for instance, something that we do as the National Convention Bureau in South Africa is that we are looking at how are we going to incorporate now the virtual part when we do bid support packages. Are we only looking at people that are physically in the building, or are we also looking on all the eyeballs, that could be on our destination, and what that return on investment? And I think it is a balancing act, but it's stuff that we will have to look at and come together again as the industry and set those rules. I think in the past, I always had this thing about us going and bid, and then the one that has the biggest checkbook, is the one that, I don't know if the young people still know what a checkbook is, but anyway, some people that have the biggest budget, will win the meeting. And I think in the time that we are in, and the reason, going back to basics, why do we have meetings? Because I think one of the things that is very clear is that it's very easy to maybe replace meetings sometimes. And I can just use another example for us in South Africa. Cape Town won the ophthalmology. We hoped that it would be the biggest meeting that would come to Cape Town, and unfortunately they had to cancel. And they are going virtual, and we need to look at, okay, so if they go virtual, how do we then together make a success of it? So I think it's our clients need to be in it with us, our venues, the whole value chain, our suppliers, and everyone need to take a little bit of that cost. But it will definitely, my view, my personal view is that whilst we grappled with that to add, and venues did a very good job in adding greening standards. I think these standards will have to be forever. And it is how we are going to incorporate it in, into the offering that we have. So for me, the support packages really need, developing a support package that is inclusive and not exclusive.
Thank you, Amanda. I saw Frank there. I think it's Frank from Rwanda. Hi, Frank. I see that you say government should actually come in and give health support packages. And I actually support that, because I think as the tourism sector, and I think many governments have realized that we actually can drive not only skills development, but job creation. And I think with this sector being so tremendously hard hit across the world, I think we've seen the devastating impact it's had on communities and people who were very much reliant on maybe a daily wage to engage with. And so I think there's definitely a merit there. And Frank, in that comment of yours, as saying, that potentially should be something that we as a sector look after in the kits. And I think, Amanda, you alluded to it there in the subvention fund, that it will actually be earmarked or ring-fenced as well. So I think there's a bit of discussion on how we approach that. And maybe another, once again, an African approach. These are the standards, these are the recommendations. How do we roll it out? So maybe whilst, Amanda, I didn't like your word housekeeping, maybe we've got some African housekeeping to be done, and to actually some work to be put together as a collective group. So thank you, ladies, for all those thoughts and ideas there. The last question or item that we'd like to discuss today, we'd also like to pose to you as our panelists that are attending. And it's this. You've put your crystal ball away because maybe that came true or it didn't, excuse me. But now it's January 2022. There is a vaccine has been found for COVID-19. I'm setting the tone. You all need to just picture this a little bit. I'm reading out of my storybook here. January 2022. COVID-19 vaccine. Everyone gets a vaccine card. We as Africa have done all the housekeeping that we can. What does a meeting look like beyond, so we're going past 2022? What would have changed? Thinking out the box, being a little bit creative, giving you carte blanche, and also everyone in the audience or attending, please, what is it that you think? Let's think a little bit out the box. We're always just thinking of the next item or the one suggestion, or because what we've heard on a webinar. But now you've got carte blanche. What is it? Where are we going? How are we bringing people together? How is it working? Amanda, what is your long-term 2030 post-COVID-19 think out the box moment?
So much, Nina. I wish it was already there, because I think we are so ready. So I think, hopefully we will be successfully implemented our recovery plan. I think that is, that is an important part, and all these wonderful ideas will be executed. But what will a meeting look like in 2020? I think health, safety, travel, will be part of our world. I don't think that will ever go away. I read something where they said, we always expected, I suppose, from, the planes to be deep cleaned. But we like the engines, but let us leave it there because we know that is not the fact. But I think, again, the whole value chain, that health safety will be something that we will have, that it will stay. So sanitation and hygiene, in the meetings, and sanitation and hygiene also mean social distancing. And, what will that social, a different way for us to, of course, to meet with each other, to have tea breaks, creative ways. I think one of the other things that will be part and parcel of, the new way of doing is that technology will not just be an afterthought. Technology will be in the forefront. I think as an industry, we really got, we always had that. And I remember me going to conferences, I always thought, I just don't want to listen to another way of how will I, have a webinar, or how will I have technology as part, or the digital marketing. But I think it's a reality now, and it's something that will stay. And what is more important is that we will have to do it in a way that it feels real, that it is a memorable experience, because that is something that is not going to go away. It's going to be very important for us to focus on experiences. And experiences is such a wide word, but I think for us being, in South Africa here, we are now at day 34, I think, in lockdown. I think it is very clear for us that experiences is actually why we like to travel, we like to go to meetings, to meet people. And how you are going to do that is very important. And then I think it's going back to basics. I think in the past years, we started to be more smarter, have more frills and meetings. And I think it will be having that discussion with your meetings client, or with your clients, and really get the outcome that they want to have for the meeting. So the focus of those sectors that they are working in and that they want to develop, I think that is very important. And then collaboration on cost and price, I think that will stay now. We know now how quickly it is. And one of the things, for instance, in that we know now can happen is that you don't have to pay when you want to change the air ticket, and who will take that cost, and how do we work together, so I think collaboration on cost and price will definitely stay and be part of our way forward. I think for me, those are the things that I would love to say that things will be the same, but it will definitely not be the same. But the meetings architecture, so I want to kind of say that new skills will also be, in this time, new skills will be developed and will come out, because I think from a professional conference organizer, your roles are really coming to a really scientific way of thinking of meeting architecture and what a meeting will look like.
Thanks, Amanda. Lindiwe, your 2030, here we are, vision, you've got your vaccine, you're looking just as beautiful as now, nothing's changed, but it's better. Where are we?
Hey, thank you, Nina. I think I'm really getting excited. I think I'm there already. You can just imagine me going and hugging everybody, receiving all my hugs and my warmth from everyone. So I think this outbreak has taught us a few things, right? So I think the travel restrictions and the lockdown in particular have brought out some significant developments which will impact on our industry after a solution has been found. We know that we've got the vaccine and we're moving away. But first and the important thing is the appreciation in many people to get out there. I really think people still want to go out there and explore and experience and the wonders of this world. I believe that there will be a resurgence of the tourism, and the meetings will continue to rotate around the world because people have that deep sense or that deep desire to travel and see places that they've never seen before. Hopefully this will have a positive spin-off for the destinations, which will then, or some of those that have been undersold in the past, I see people now really looking at their new travel bucket list. I just see people looking at where they can now go. Secondly, I see arising from this pandemic or this period, people embracing new ways of having meetings. I don't believe that technology will ever replace the need for a face-to-face interaction, because I think that people will always want to get together and for events, and people want to look someone in the eye and have that emotional connection, that spiritual connection, shake your hand or give a hug. So the virtual technology can never, take that away. But we've seen in this recent period now how the webinars have really given us platform to be able to talk, but I don't think they offer that same experience. So, however, I do believe that there is an opportunity arising from that, and we need to take advantage of that. as we move forward and we find the vaccine. I see a result of people finding ways of interacting. They've realized that the virtual meetings that they've held and the digital meetings with people on the other side of the world are becoming more important, and that we're not gonna move away from technology. So we're gonna find ourselves using technology. I really believe that we're gonna find the new events that we're gonna be doing, having a collection of the hybrid events, so that if you can't come to the venue, you will also be able to connect digitally. So I see our clients hosting not just traditional events, face-to-face events, but having some form of digital interaction as a way of taking their events forward. So I see us being able to attract a wider audience. Those who want to travel will travel, and those who don't want to travel will connect digitally. So I think for people like me and Amanda, who wants to get those hugs, will carry on doing the hugs and visiting, but some of the people will still use the technology. So that's the beauty that this COVID-19 has taught us, that we can find ways of having these events. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindiwe. Doris, what are you thinking 2030? We've got the vaccine. What are our meetings looking like?
Oh, what can I add that has not already been spoken by my predecessors? But what I can say is this. For all those people who have got technophobia, well, brace yourselves, because technology is really, really going to take off in a big way. That's just the way it's going to be. You know, technology is going to take off. It already has started taking off, but it's going to accelerate even more. One, from a PCO perspective, event design is going to change. The way we design events, like Amanda, I think Amanda touched on that, is going to be completely different. We're going to change how we do the meeting layouts. We're going to change how meetings are going to roll out. All of that is going to change, which means the supporting elements of events and conferences is also going to have to change. People might still be, yes, there's a vaccine, but nobody wants to touch a mic that was already touched by God knows how many other people. So venues layout is going to change. We may not see mics, handheld mics ever again. We may never see headsets for translations ever again. All these things are going to change and things are going to be new. How food is served, if it's going to be buffet style, I think that's going to change. Touching. People will want to reduce the touch points, I would think. Even if there is a vaccine, I know you said we have to think about a vaccine, but touch points are going to be greatly reduced. So, you know, we're going to have to think, how are we serving food? How are we going to serve the coffee breaks? You're just going to, if you want to go into a door, will you need to touch a door anymore? Venues will have to probably have doors that just open up as soon as someone is there, but touch points will definitely be reduced. I think we're going to see amazing things where technology is concerned. You know how you, in some movies, that you see that people clap their hands and lights are on? All of that is going to be the norm right now. Reduce touch points, a new skill. So we're all going to have to be techno wizards. I mean, some of us not very. I like to tell the younger people in the team that you're the tech people, but now it seems like we're all going to
have the tech people.
Yeah. So definitely, event design will evolve in an amazing way. I just can't wait to see where it's taking us, to be quite honest.
Thanks, Doris. That's lovely. I like that reduction of touch points. But ladies, I don't think you think out the box enough. Because I don't know if any of you have got an iPhone or rather, an iWatch. I mean, I'm thinking to myself, it's 2030 and you don't have a passport and you're not going to have your yellow jaundice card anymore. You're only going to have your watch on, and your watch is going to be your device that tells people what your temperature is. When you arrive at the airport, you're going to go through a screening like a hologram. It's going to only take 2 seconds to get through. If there's any problem, you'll have to step aside. And if you aren't okay, what they'll do is they'll immediately top up your vaccine in your body. It will register on your watch, and you will be good to travel immediately to your destination. When you're speaking, they will switch it on, and when you're speaking, you don't need a microphone. Lindiwe and her colleagues in the venue chapters are going to have microphones on there that can be controlled. The speaker from that point will be able to speak. And when you've got a question, those can be remotely logged in to the facilitator to deal with. Tea and coffee, I'm not too sure how that will happen. You'll definitely be able to, from your watch, tell the door to open, to have touch points. And if someone comes close to you that potentially has a temperature, your watch is going to vibrate to warn you. This will also be your passport, all your information. Might be slightly bigger, the screen, so that we can actually navigate it, share information, check out the program. It's all going to be there. And with regards to clapping your hands, it's called, I think Alexi, my boys, was telling me, it's already there, you can get it. And as is Suri. So I really think we'll definitely meet, because people will want to come and see the lions and elephant and hopefully the rhino in Africa. And they will have their vaccine, and you will be vaccinated, and you can top up anywhere to make sure you are okay, and you can hug who you choose to hug. So that really concludes our session. Esme, I don't know if there were any other comments with regards to our vision for 2030 before we go to a Q&A session.
Nina, most of the things were what we've touched on. Technology is going to be important. Health and safety is going to be important. And in saying that social distancing, that's the buzzword, that also came up again. But then also a comment at the same time to say that humans are social creatures. Yes, it's fine to, at the moment, do it via the webinars and the Zoom meetings, but we also want that personal interaction.
I just think we're not really thinking big enough. I think we're so caught up in this virus. It really gives us an opportunity to think out the box. I mean, we got to a venue, it can actually tell us, you know, very often when you go to a mine or a factory, they'll say health and safety, no injuries, this, or be aware, this area, or we're busy cleaning. You know, so all of those communication tools, I think they're actually already there. If we're really clever and we negotiate and we could actually have that implemented so that the cost efficiency is down, and we can meet and we can travel, because we want to eat that delicious food that we only find in Rwanda, or that yummy putu and sauce that you find for milk tart. I think that engagement is so important. So thank you to our panelists. We think you were fantastic. Thank you very much for your contributions and for sharing. I'm going to hand over to Esme just to see if there are any questions that were logged that we could address whilst time permits.
Thank you, Nina. I'm going to start with a question that we have received from Dirk Elsinger from Convention Industry Consultants when he registered. And it is very much linked to the association client as well as the venue, the conference organizer. So Dirk's question is to the panelists, if they are aware of any African organizations or associations that now already have started the process to restructure their conference. So although it might not have happened yet, but what has associations and African associations specifically put in place to have a new meeting design conference, if any of the panelists is aware of any of those. And then as well, if any...
I think, Esme, we've dealt with that. Continue.
I think Lindiwe wants to say something.
Yes. Thank you, Esme. I wanted to respond to Dirk's question. I wanted to say that we had last year the South African Society Labor Law. We had an event with them towards, I think, October, November last year, where they also used some of the delegates were in the center and some also connected digitally. So that's what I was referring to, the hybrid events. So that's what we've used already. We have another one that is coming, the African Association for Public Administration, that also coming December 2020. They're using that method of having the delegates coming into the center and others are joining in digitally. Another one where we've used that method is the World Conference on Drowning Prevention. We also used a new way of doing the event. Others were in and others connected digitally. So the hybrid events, I think, are going to be the way to go as we move forward. I hope I've answered your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindiwe. Sorry, Nina. The next question, again, very specific to all of us on the continent. We all speak about regional versus international meetings. So regional meetings will become more prominent. If so, how can Africa take practical steps to actually increase these regional meetings? So any suggestions from any of our panelists on practical things we can now do to make sure that we increase regional meetings versus international meetings?
Amanda, did you want to respond, or Doris?
Yeah, I think, it's that pet project of, and now I know that, this is a global one. But, I think for Africa, we keep on saying, let us have our database, let us assist each other. If we have rules and regulations and protocols, bidding protocols, we can easily assist, with the support that we give, 2, 3, 4 destinations, and say, let us help this association, develop the association through all our practical examples that we already have, like Association Day at Meetings Africa. We have our own event where we have the African fraternity coming together. But I think what is important is, and I don't want to say it's standardized, because I listened to you, Nina, about us that not going to drink tea and coffee, maybe just swallow a tablet or something and then it becomes water in our mouths. Hopefully not. But but I think it is important that we do have some standards that we all adhere to, to assist these associations, and have a rotation protocol, where we actually will support, and not just them rotating their meeting, but also developing that specific association. And I think that is a practical way to do it. And we don't need to start with 100. We can start with, looking at sectors that is for Africa important, development sectors that is for Africa important, and choose 4 or 5 of those, and then focus on, on those fraternities.
Doris?
Yeah, sorry, if I could just add on to that. I think when it comes to collectively Africa, we have amazing ideas. We really do. We come up with all manner of good ideas of what we want to do, where we want to go, how we want to get there. What we don't do is communicate it after that. If you don't communicate that you are open for regional business or regional meetings, nobody's going to know that Africa are ready for regional meetings. We can sit here and say we need to have regional meetings, but then we don't go out and have a communications campaign that supports that. Because what you don't communicate remains an anomaly. Nobody knows about it. So if someone in another African region wants to bring a meeting to another African region, they don't know that that exists. So we keep focusing and we communicate to the Western world, and we don't communicate internally. We need to change that. Somewhere, somehow, there has to be an Africa-driven communications drive. Otherwise, we'll be singing this song and having this conversation in 2013 again and again and again. It's all well and good to have great ideas, but if you don't say anything about them for people to know, nothing's going to happen.
I think the other thing, Doris, is to actually have a plan. It doesn't help you
Yeah.
just communicate. You need to say, well, this airline is going to help us, and if you go here, we can offer the same rates, and actually have a little bit of a plan. I think you're completely right. Isme, one of the other questions that came up, I think, earlier, I just wanted to, just being mindful of our time today, is that in Europe, they've sort of got a bit of a timeline that Q4 of 2020 will potentially be meetings coming back. Maybe we can just ask our panelists from their experience, from a destination, a venue, and PCO. Ladies, when do you think we're going to start having or hosting or being able to host meetings? Lindiwe, do you have a sense from the venue sector?
Sorry, Nina, you're talking specifically for international events?
I'm talking any event. You know, at this point, as you've said, we are open for business and we are ready and raring to go. We want to put the housework aside and get the work done. When will we be able to have a meeting at, do you think?
I think we need to take stock of what our president said. Amanda will remember that the president said, we're gonna move in at level 2 or level 1. So we're gonna be the last industry to be opened for business. And I fully understand why the president is not like he doesn't care that we need to work and go back to work, but we are in the business of moving people around. So tourism, our events talks about bringing a whole lot of people in the area. But I think the important thing for our leadership to tell us is what is the health imperatives? How is that going to change? Are they still going to allow us to have international events or various events that will allow us to have 20,000 delegates? Or are we now going to be restricted? So I think our movement or our events that are going to come are going to be dependent on what our leadership or our government is allowing us to do. But as a center, we have events that are ready, that are wanting to come and do their events. We're looking at about September. I think.
So your thinking is from September that there are some plans. I know that there are some colleagues from Indonesia, from other African countries, from Austria. I saw Henrik is joining. So the South African government, just to perhaps explain what Lindiwe was referring to, is that we've done a categorization of the risk levels, and currently and at the highest with lockdown with no economic activity is level 5. We're going to level 4 from Friday, the 1st of May, which will be restricted movement, majority, still quite a strong lockdown, and 2 is sort of the lower down when things are better. And I think that's just what Lindiwe alluded to. We have to take our lead from our national government and Department of Health under the guidance of our president. But you're saying September, you're hearing? Amanda, you want to jump in here?
Yes, Nina, I think that this is really linked, like you just now said, you know, from country to country, because we see the comments, you know, from China, they already started some. What I think what is important is that, and I'm talking now Africa, because I think, you know, we are here, and it's important if we say that regional is where we believe the first meetings will return, or that we could potentially return. I think it's important to note that we are going into our winter, you know. Certain Southern Africa is going into winter time, and the peak, you know, from our association professionals, you know, our doctors are saying that they believe that South Africa specifically will only peak in September. We hope that the lockdown, and I'm sure for every country it's the same, that the lockdown really results into, you know, what we wanted it to be, so that we can contain this crisis. I think what for every country, what is very important is that their source markets, you know, if their source markets are able to travel, like you say, we can open tomorrow, but you know, if our borders are not open. And I think I hear what Lindy was saying, that, you know, what regulations we need to put in. I believe that we need to determine those regulations. I think that there are work for us to be done. I know you don't like housekeeping, but, you know, homework to be done. Come together as Africa, bring some standards, but also I think worldwide. I think ICCA, I think you said, I think for ICCA, it will be fantastic if we start, you know, a group development, you know, of these regulations, so that we can have a standard and be able to operate again.
Thanks, Amanda. And Doris, from your perspective, looking from Rwanda, how do you see it? When will you host your first meeting? What are your clients telling you? What are your thoughts?
Again, I mean, we're guided by what the government regulations are, but from a Rwanda perspective, the calendar is full, totally full, I believe, from October all through to December 15th, totally full. Right now, you cannot get a spot to host a conference or a meeting, in Rwanda. So I guess for us, that's what we're going with. But again, I hear what Amanda has just said. This will also depend on our source markets. I mean, what will be the situation with them? It's all, maybe the meetings might be booked out right now. But if they're not able to come, then maybe that will be taken forward. But for now, our calendars are completely booked as of October, I believe. Frank, if you're there, you could post a comment, but I believe from October through to December 15th, Rwanda is full.
Okay,
So,
well, that's very positive. I like that, Doris. That's, it gives us a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel after the September increase of COVID-19. Ladies, once again, thank you. Esme, I think we've got a few minutes for you to wrap up this session for us. This recording will be available. Esme and the colleagues, I just want to say, Esme, thank you to you for cracking the whip and getting us ladies in line. As I'm sure you know, it's not an easy task with Amanda, Doris, Ndiwe, and myself. And nothing is ever possible without the people behind the scenes. Thank you very much also from our side as the panelists to Francesca. I see Josephine is with us, and Jess, thank you ladies for your support and contribution. Esme, thank you very much. And from all of us, over to you.